Imagine walking into a place full of dreams, only to be told you don't belong. That's exactly what happened to Jordan, a young black teenager with a love for luxury cars. He stepped into a high-end dealership, eyes wide with excitement, hoping to admire the sleek vehicles he had always dreamed of. But instead of being welcomed, he was met with cold stares and judgmental whispers. A salesman, assuming he couldn't afford anything, rudely asked him to leave. Embarrassed and humiliated, Jordan walked out, his heart heavy with disappointment. But what the dealership didn't know was that Jordan wasn't just any teenager. His mother, a powerful billionaire businesswoman, had built an empire from the ground up. And when she heard about what had happened, she wasn't just angry, she was determined to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. The next day, the dealership was in for the shock of a lifetime. A stunning Rolls-Royce Phantom, gleaming under the sunlight, slowly pulled up to their entrance. The doors opened, and out stepped someone they never expected to see again. The same boy they had kicked out, but this time, everything was different. What happened next left the entire dealership speechless. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. The moment Jordan stepped out of the Rolls-Royce, the entire dealership fell silent. Salesmen who had ignored him the day before now stood frozen, their eyes locked on the luxury car that had just pulled up. Customers turned their heads, watching in curiosity. No one could believe what they were seeing. Jordan took his time, adjusting his jacket as he glanced around the showroom. The same salesman who had kicked him out was standing behind the counter, his face turning pale. He recognized the boy immediately, but now Jordan wasn't just another teenager. He was someone important, someone worth paying attention to. Inside the dealership, whispers started spreading. Who is he? That's a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Whoever owns it must be rich. Employees exchanged nervous glances, realizing they had made a terrible mistake. Then, the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, confident, and dressed in a sleek designer outfit. Her presence alone commanded respect. This was Jordan's mother, Evelyn Carter, one of the most successful businesswomen in the country. And she wasn't here to shop. She walked straight into the dealership, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Every step carried a silent message. She was here for a reason. As she reached the center of the showroom, she finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I believe my son was here yesterday," she said, looking directly at the stunned salesman. The tension in the room thickened. No one dared to speak. The salesman shifted uncomfortably, his confident smirk from the previous day completely gone. His eyes darted to his manager, hoping for some kind of backup, but the older man only stared at Evelyn with a tight expression, sensing the trouble ahead. Jordan watched, arms crossed, as his mother remained calm but commanding. "He came here out of pure excitement," she continued. "But instead of treating him with respect, you judged him by his appearance. You assumed he didn't belong." The salesman swallowed hard. I didn't mean to." Evelyn raised a hand, cutting him off. "No need to explain," she said smoothly. "Actions speak louder than words." A few customers, sensing the tension, pretended to browse, but were clearly listening. Employees stood still, watching their co-worker squirm. The manager finally stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mrs. Carter, we sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding. It was never our intention to make your son feel unwelcome." Jordan scoffed quietly. A misunderstanding. That wasn't what it felt like yesterday when he was humiliated in front of strangers. He still remembered the stares, the way the salesman had smirked, as if throwing him out was just another part of the job. Evelyn didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned to Jordan. "What do you think?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. "Should we give them another chance?" The question hung in the air. The salesman's face was a mix of desperation and regret. He knew whatever happened next was no longer in his hands. Jordan felt the weight of his mother's words. He could see the nervous glances, the fake smiles, and the desperate attempt to fix what had already been done. A part of him wanted to walk away, to leave them standing there, knowing they had lost a customer who could buy out the entire dealership if they wanted. But another part of him, the part still stung by yesterday's humiliation, wasn't ready to let it go so easily. He took a slow step forward, his voice steady. "You didn't think I was worth your time yesterday," he said, looking directly at the salesman. "So why should I waste mine on you today?" The salesman opened his mouth but had no answer. The manager quickly stepped in, his voice overly polite. "We truly regret that experience, young man. Please, let us make it right. Perhaps we can show you our finest models." He gestured toward the luxury cars lined up under the bright showroom lights. Evelyn exchanged a glance with her son, sensing his frustration. She knew what he wanted, to make them feel the same discomfort he had felt. But she also knew that real power wasn't in proving a point with words, it was in action. She turned to the manager with a slight smile. "Actually, we're not here to buy a car." The room fell silent again. Confused expressions spread across the employees' faces. If they weren't there to buy, then why had they come? Jordan stepped back beside his mother, watching as she pulled out her phone. "We're here," she continued, her voice smooth, "to make sure no other kid walks into this place and gets treated the way my son was." The tension in the room reached its peak. The employees shifted uncomfortably. Something big was about to happen, and no one knew what Evelyn Carter had planned next. The manager forced a polite smile, but his eyes flickered with unease. "Mrs. Carter, I assure you, this was an isolated incident. We value all our customers." Evelyn didn't respond right away. Instead, she scrolled through her phone with deliberate patience. The silence stretched, making everyone more uncomfortable. Jordan could tell that his mother wasn't just making a statement, she was about to do something they wouldn't forget. Then, with a single tap, she held up the screen for them to see. A live video was already gaining views, thousands of them. A clip of Jordan being dismissed from the dealership had surfaced online overnight, and now it was everywhere. The same place that had turned him away was now trending, but not in the way they had hoped. The salesman's face turned ghostly pale. The manager's jaw tensed. Employees shifted, realizing that this wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was a public reckoning. "An isolated incident," Evelyn repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Because I've been reading the comments, and it looks like my son isn't the only one who's been treated this way here." Jordan watched as the dealership staff scrambled for damage control. The whispers from customers grew louder. A few people pulled out their phones, checking the viral post for themselves. Then, just as the manager opened his mouth to plead his case, the dealership doors swung open again. More cameras, more reporters. Someone had tipped them off, and now the whole world was watching. The moment the reporters stepped inside, chaos erupted. Cameras flashed, microphones were raised, and voices clashed as journalists rushed forward, eager to capture the unfolding drama. The dealership, once a quiet showroom filled with polished cars and smooth-talking salespeople, had turned into the center of a breaking news story. The manager wiped his forehead, his forced composure slipping. "Mrs. Carter, please," he begged, lowering his voice. "Let's discuss this privately. There's no need for all this." Evelyn gave him a knowing smile. "That's the problem," she said calmly. "Situations like this always happen in silence, but not today." Jordan watched, his heart pounding. Just yesterday, he had felt powerless, pushed aside like he didn't matter. But now, the same people who dismissed him were scrambling, their carefully built image cracking under the pressure. Just then, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, his presence commanding attention. The dealership employees went stiff. Jordan didn't recognize him, but the manager did, his face turned a shade whiter. "Mr. Bennett," the manager stammered, We weren't expecting you." Mr. Bennett was the regional director of the luxury car brand, and his sharp eyes took in the scene immediately. He turned to Evelyn and extended a hand. "Mrs. Carter, I saw the video. This is not how we run our business." Evelyn shook his hand but said nothing. The tension in the room was thick as he turned to the manager. "We'll be reviewing your dealership's operations immediately." The manager swallowed hard. He knew what that meant. And then, just as the weight of the situation settled in, Evelyn gave them one final blow. "Oh, and by the way," she said, her voice smooth as ever, "I own a significant number of shares in this company. Consider this a personal visit from a shareholder." The air left the room. Jordan had to fight back a grin as he watched the realization dawn on their faces. His mother hadn't just come to make a statement, she had the power to change everything. The reporters caught every second of it. The dealership's fate was sealed, and as Jordan and his mother walked back to their Rolls-Royce, he knew one thing for sure: no one would ever doubt his worth again. As Jordan and his mother stepped back into their Rolls-Royce, he glanced at her, still processing everything that had just happened. The same dealership that had dismissed him so easily was now in complete disarray, their reputations on the line. The manager stood frozen, realizing his mistake too late. The salesman who had humiliated Jordan looked like he wished he could disappear. But none of that mattered anymore. Evelyn settled into her seat and turned to her son with a small smile. "You don't demand respect," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You carry yourself in a way that leaves people no choice but to give it." Jordan let those words sink in as the driver pulled away from the dealership. Yesterday, he had walked into that place excited, full of admiration for luxury cars. Today, he was leaving with something far more valuable: a lesson in power, respect, and standing up for himself. By the time they reached home, Jordan's phone was buzzing non-stop. The video had gone viral. People from all over were commenting, sharing their own experiences, and calling for change. His story had become something bigger than just one dealership. It was about the way people were treated, about fairness and respect. As he sat back, looking out the window, he felt different, stronger. The next time he walked into any room, he wouldn't be looking for approval. He'd walk in knowing exactly who he was. And that was worth more than any car in the world.